Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. I haven't got a huge amount of time today, and I do have to water my mounts, because they should have been done yesterday and didn't get done, and my holy clay pots. So as I go round, I'm going to do a fast update on those types of things. So anything that's in a pot, apart from the holy clay pots, won't get looked at today. So starting along here, this is that is a fungus gnat that is getting on my nerves because I can't catch the flipping thing. I'll get him in a minute. He's doomed. But this is my Jenkinsii aggregatum cross. This has produced quite a few new growths this year, practically doubled in size, and it's still pushing out new growths. One there, one up the top there, and another one down the bottom. So this is progressing well, and it's produced a lot of roots this year. A lot. You know, that had next to none in the spring. Now it's got a mountful. This is Jenkinsii, the species. This again has produced a lot of new growth. It's still producing them. It's slowing down now. There's still a few new ones that are maturing down the bottom and off the end there, and it's still pushed out another new one at the top. So it's expanded quite a bit this year. I won't say it's doubled in size, but probably a third of the growth on there is new this year. You'd better bloom this time. This Rodriguezii, which I always have trouble saying. Do you know what? When I got this, that was a present from Rachel, I was adamant that that was in the Cattleya alliance, and some relatively recent research has actually put that in the Oncidium alliance. So I'm not quite as sure that that is well suited to a mount. Just simply by changing its classification makes me think about, is that the best place for it? But it has grown a nice new growth this year. The leaf's much bigger than anything from before. Pseudobulbs swelling up. This giant pathetic looking Cattleya is slowly recovering, but it is slow progress. There's 3 pieces on there. This one may come off, but it has grown a lot of roots, but its last new growth aborted. The small piece here has got a nice strong new growth coming out, and it has produced quite a few roots. The largest part is the part that retained the oldest part of the plant when it was mounted. So most of the leaves on here look awful because they're old leaves. But again, it's pushed out a new growth down there. It's got this new growth here, maturing with a sheath. Whether that will come to anything or not, I don't know. My Lodigesii, or Gesii, whatever you want, has grown well this year, put out a good root system, and yeah, I'm pleased with the progress on that. It's a new plant for me. This is also a new plant. This is Fleckery, Aussie typos, one. Fleckery, yeah, one eye. That's just pushing out a nice new growth at the moment. The latest growth to mature on it is larger than anything from before, so coming on well. Don't see any reason why this cane shouldn't bloom. The only bloom I've had on this, singular, was one bloom on the previous cane, this one. Anyway, new growth coming on. My 2 little Orangus up here, Fastuosa, the 2 spikes. As I say, we'll be looking at spring before those actually bloom. They're so slow. But it's a healthy little plant. It's the first Fastuosa I've had that looks good. You know, they're not a large plant. My Citrata decided to die. Luckily, it managed to sprout out of the base before it keeled over. Whether I can progress that up to blooming size remains to be seen. Very disappointed in that. That was quite a good plant, and it just died literally in a matter of days. Coming over here, my 3 mounted Phalaenopsis have been forgotten. They shouldn't be out here. They should be in with the others in the warm. But this is one of the ones I told off in the spring and actually said, if you don't grow some roots, you're going to die. Now get on with it. Well, it's got on with it. It has pushed out some roots. Its oldest leaf is keeling over now. But it's capable of recovering now. It'll be slow progress, I suspect, but nonetheless, not dead yet. This is another one that got told off for lack of roots. it's done some roots now, nicely attached to the mount as well, pushing on round the back there, just pushing out a new leaf. The oldest leaf that was produced sort of last winter is the one with the patchy colouring on it, which worried me a bit, but then it produced that one, which is quite nice, and now it's producing another one. So, you know, that's in a good stage of recovery. That's gone beyond worry now. The large one, which is green apple, that has grown a lot of roots this year. That's progressed quite well. Its oldest leaf is just going, so that'll drop soon. I don't tend to take them off. I tend to let them drop. You know, that will go completely yellow, I expect, and then one morning I'll come in here and it'll be on the floor. But this one has a spike, so this one will bloom again soon. Latest leaf on this had trouble. Don't ask me why, but it didn't. Previous leaf, good. This latest leaf, not so good. But that's probably around the time... No, actually, this one's been on the mount a long time. So what happened with that leaf, I don't know. It got some damage somehow or other. Unknown, but, you know, I mean, the plant's not going to die or anything. It's got a good root system and it is growing a spike. That's the 3 mounted Phalaenopsis. Quite a few of the mounts now, because I've rearranged things, have actually got their back to me because they're facing the light, and I use the underside of the shelves to actually hang the hooks on. It allows me to get them closer to the glass. It just means I don't look at them. This thing is a Bifrenaria harrisoniae, and this grew 2 lovely strong new bulbs this year, one out each end, so larger than before. Good leaves on them, and pushed out a lot of new roots, and now it's pushing out that at the base of that pseudo bulb. Now I don't know whether that's a spike or another new growth. I'll be happy with either. This has never bloomed for me, so if it is a bloom, great, it'll be a first one. If it's not, well, you know, then it's another new growth. But it's produced a lot of roots this year. That's good. Stick that back up there somewhere. I haven't watered these few yet. I just want to get at them while I'm there. This is an epidendrum, and it's nocturnum, I think it is. Yeah, something like that. It's bad writing on the tag. I must replace that. Now this, at the top of that cane, has been there 6 months, maybe even longer. And every now and again it shows signs of moving. It is a spike. But I don't know whether it's ever going to bloom, but quite recently it's pushed up this new cane. Yeah, so that's a good new cane. Hopefully, if this one doesn't bloom, that one should do, because it's another non-bloomer. And again, this has produced quite a good root system this year, along with that new cane. So progress, that's all we can ask for, progress. The more progress there is, the bigger, the stronger the plant, the more chance it's got of blooming. So I've got another one lurking in here. This one wasn't doing well at all, and it's just recently started to perk up. It's producing a nice sort of strong new cane on the right hand side there, and another one next to it, narrow one coming up there. So it has produced a few new roots recently, so it's growing, but it's not what I'd call a strong healthy plant. This is Dendrobium moniliform, and it's a variegated variety. Yeah, I mean, some say that variegation is not natural, but it's there, whether it's natural or not. So there's some progress on that. It's coming on. It is growing some new growths. Effectively, that's a continuous grower. You know, so I'm quite happy to feed and water that right through the winter. I won't be doing it as often because it won't use the water, because the temperatures are lower and the days are shorter. We've clicked over. I mean, I could officially declare my growing season finish is tonight, because tonight we drop down below 11 hours. Yeah, and that's the point at which the plants think this isn't quite right. I haven't got enough day length. I'm going to slow up. So the slowing up will start being noticeable on some of the plants from tonight, basically. So the 11 hours is the magic mark where everything just starts to slow. I wanted to show you this. You've seen this Phalaenopsis quite frequently, and it does have a lovely orange banding round the outside, but as the flowers fade, the yellow disappears. Totally disappears. These blooms, the lower ones that you can see now, are going to drop, but the branch is opening. So this is what it looks like when it first opens, and it's brilliant yellow and then deep red, gorgeous little bloom, and the very, very pale orange veining round the outside of the lip will eventually thicken and become a brighter orange. So the colour change on this is brilliant, because it starts off gorgeous and it ends up a nice bright orange. So that's a good mover. That's not a bad plant. It's got a second spike coming up here, and I mean I've only recently got this, but I mean as Phalaenopsis go, that's not a bad plant. There's a sign of a new fan starting at the base there. Any others anywhere? No. So at the moment the latest 2 fans on that plant are in spike. Yeah. So it's unlikely to produce any more until some more fans mature, but there is a sign of a new one coming at the base. So progress, very new plant, that one. I haven't had that one long. Let's just grab this Brassavola. This is Chieftain Ludlow's, and I mounted it, which is on reflection maybe not the best idea for a Brassavola, because they do drink when they're growing, but it's got enough moss around there and a big enough root system to still hydrate okay. And the latest new growth is pushing on nicely. The previous growth bloomed, which I didn't expect. I thought that plant's too young to bloom, but it did. So there's no reason at all why this latest growth shouldn't bloom. It's doing me a favour, because the latest roots on that new growth are heading straight for the moss and the mount, which means they're not going to be aerial, so they will hydrate better. So that's that one. I'll have to break off now because I'm moving on to a different section. I'll be back. Now this is Dendrobium senilli, and I am very pleased with the progress on this. Trifle annoyed when I got it home from Malvern, because I thought I had a big plant when in fact I had half a dozen small plants all squashed together. But when I unmounted it and sort of redid it, because it was on a cork tile which I didn't like too much, I didn't think all the pieces would make it, and that tiny little piece down the bottom probably won't, but all the rest have. They've all taken. So, you know, I've now got probably 4 plants on there. 1, 2, 3, yeah, 4. The one on the left there is the largest piece. That's produced some good roots and pushed on its growth and started 2 new ones. So, you know, that's going to be a good piece. If anything's going to bloom next year, it'll be that bit. I'll say if, because I'm not going to rest that. That's just going to stay out here and get treated as a normal plant, because it's in its infancy as far as this environment and setting up its root system and everything is concerned. If I rest that, I will either set it back or kill it. I killed the last one, literally. You know, I rested it, it dried out, and it just never came out of the winter rest. Went to sleep and didn't wake up, so I'm not doing that again. But the progress on that is good. I am well pleased with that. That's now a good looking plant. Still not as good looking as the last one was in its heyday, but it's getting there. Yeah, give that another year's growth. I think that's going to be quite a good one. This Brassavola hybrid, this is David Sanders. This was a worry at one point because it produced a new growth out the centre of the plant and promptly aborted. And I thought, oh hello, what's up with you then? Never bloomed, and it remained dormant for a little while after that new growth keeled over. But since then it's pushed out 3 more and it's regenerating a root system. So whatever was wrong with it, it's probably got over it, and it's pushing on. One of those new growths had better bloom in the spring. As I say, I've had this one long enough that this should have bloomed by now. Brassavolas like high light. There's no getting away from that. But that lives next to my Brassavola nodosa that has bloomed well for several years, and this one hasn't. So they're living in the same place, in the same environment, getting the same treatment. This one's never bloomed, the other one has. So come on, get your act together. But you know, that's 3 good new growths pushing out and a regenerated root system. So there's no reason really why at least one of those new growths shouldn't bloom. But it'll probably be late winter, spring before they are in a position to do so. So luckily they've pushed on to a reasonable size while I've still got a reasonable growing system, because they're going to have to mature, you know, with shorter daylight. So we'll see how it goes, but yeah. Progress, 3 new growths, that's not bad. This is the Brassavola nodosa, and this one, I'm surprised this recovered, quite honestly, because the moss it was on was completely broken down and it had quite badly stalled and lost quite a lot of roots. So cleaned it all up and remounted it, and it had 2 lovely new growths pushing up this end, those 2 stumps there, and then I promptly dropped it flat on its flipping face and broke those 2 new growths off. Well, it's pushed out a growth on both of those sections farther back, and from that base where that plant is, it's also pushed out a lot of new roots, and luckily they've gone down the back, so they're actually on the mount. So that's on the road to recovery, but I may have I've probably lost a year by breaking those off, but you know, it's got 2 new growths and it's pushed out new roots, so it's not lost, it's just set back. But it's going to take a while, you know, to get to where it would have been now if I hadn't lost those 2 growths. Anyway, not dead yet. This is Oncidium Tiny Twinkle, emphasis on the tiny, it's all in the name, you know. The new growths on this was a poorly plant. This was one of the ones that was in the Ceramis project and was nearly lost. Several pieces rotted, still a few of those old pieces left at the top there, but I managed to rescue 2 pieces, mounted it, and it sat there and did nothing for quite a while. Then it started producing new growths and the associated new root system. So the plant's recovered, and I think next year that will do great things because it has a root system to start the growing season with. But there's 3 spikes on that. Don't hold your breath. They're twinkle spikes, they take ages, but it's got 3 spikes and it's recovered. That's the main thing. I thought that was lost. Those don't come up for sale very often. You know, the various types of twinkles do, but the actual variety Tiny Twinkle, which is a dwarf version, does not come up very often. You know, those are the size of the pseudobulbs, and the blooms are associatedly small, but they are quite fragrant. So for such a tiny bloom. Anyway, coming on, recovered, and on the mend. And having done that this year, next year that should grow on really well. And here we have one of the ones on the list of why won't you bloom? My other Orangus do, why don't you? This is Mr. Sidii, as in mystic, not Mr. and Mrs. Good root system on this. Good plant, growing new leaves frequently, but so far no spike. I'll just have to give it time. It's even growing a new plant out the side. So I mean, it's growing okay, but just a non-bloomer at the moment. You know, maybe it'll have another go perhaps in the spring, we'll see how it goes, but not a sign of any spikes under there. Still growing well. It's a genuine miniature. It's not going to get a huge amount bigger than that even as it grows on. You know, those are the mature leaves. So nice lovely little plant to put on a mount. You know, looks good. Its oldest leaf's just dropping off, but that's natural progression. They do that. But yeah, coming on. Just why won't you bloom? We shall see. Don't say give it more light. It's up in the roof. Gets light. And strictly speaking, this isn't a highlight Orangus. The only highlight Orangus I've got is the one that's just finishing its blooms now, which is Decariana, which is classed as a highlight Orangus. Comes from very open deciduous areas. It's in bright light, sometimes in full sun, but this one isn't. This is a slightly lower light one. But come on, get some blinking spikes. Now, this one never gets filmed. This is Epidendrum polybulbum, but it's changed its name. It's something like Dinema or something like that now. Irrelevant. It's growing well, but it's another one on the list of why won't you flipping bloom. But That little one there looks like there's something coming up the middle between the two leaves, so maybe it's going to have a go. Got a couple of good top growth extensions there, and another one went out the side, and several extensions coming out from the centre of the plant, pointing outwards basically. So it's growing okay, and the older the part of the plant's down the base. I don't know whether it'll ever shoot out down there, maybe, but it's growing well, and I haven't had it too long, but again, never bloomed so far, but you know, maybe with the sheer amount of growth it's put on this year, it may now be strong enough to bloom, so we'll have to wait and see. But growing well, so you know, you can't have everything always, but you know, a plant that's growing well and looking okay, that's good enough. It'll bloom when it's ready. Now, this Dendrobium harveyanum was actually getting in a bit of a sorry state. It was in a pot and it just stalled. It just suddenly decided it wasn't going to grow any new growths, and it just wasn't doing very well. So I decided to take it out of the pot and mount it. It lends itself to being mounted quite well anyway, and since it went on its mount, it's pushed out some nice new growths, and it's regenerating a root system. That normally happens with dendrobiums, that's their pattern. I've got two really strong kikis on here. Don't all shout, they're earmarked already. This one's not so good, the one out to the right. It's curled, it's quite dishevelled, and its roots don't seem to be growing as well. However, the latest one has got good active roots, and it's just starting to open its leaves. So that's due to come off this coming weekend. But it is going to flower. It's just about to open that spike. So after a break, harveyanum's doing its thing again. There's actually a second spike in behind there too. So not lost, recovering. And you know, with 3 new growths, it's now got, quite honestly, you get about 4, maybe 5 spikes per cane. Not all at once. They tend to, you know, they push a spike out and then they go back a leaf joint and push another one out, then go back another one perhaps. But you can get quite a few spikes per cane. So 3 nice strong new growths means lots more blooms down the line sometime. So at least it's made it. It certainly seems to be growing better since it was put on its mount. So coming on, and the blooms will be out shortly. Probably later today actually. Okay, plans have changed. I've got to rush off out now, so I'll have to cut this one off here, and I'll effectively finish it tomorrow. But I don't want to rush, and yeah, I've got to go out, so I'll just leave it at that. And then the rest of the mounted sort of stuff, I'll go over tomorrow, so that it sort of tidies it up, if you know what I mean. But I've covered most of what's actually changed. It's just a matter of looking over the other bits and pieces. I mean, I won't be showing all of my Tolumnias, for instance. You know, I'll have a look at a couple. I won't go over every mounted dendrobium, but there are a few more I'd like to talk about, especially with the holy clay pots as well. So I'll get this one posted, and then I'll start a new one for tomorrow. Okay, thanks for dropping by. See you next time.